Okay, thank you.
Okay. We need an attorney.
Anyone with it?
Yeah, for lunch.
Hi, Nicholas Shannon. Do we have a town
Nice
attorney?
and quiet.
Excuse the delay, we're just waiting for our town attorney to come in. Hey, here he is.
I'm showing up late for the wedding.
I didn't do that. Well, maybe I did.
All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the notice of the special meeting?
Certainly. Members of the Town Board, Special Town Board meeting Thursday, September 5th, 2024 at 1 p.m. Please be advised that pursuant to Section 62 of Town Law, a special Town Board meeting will be held both in person in the Town Board Meeting Room, Southampton Town Hall, 116 Hampton Road, Southampton, New York, and via video conferencing on Thursday, September 5th, 2024 at 1 p.m. for the purpose of considering the following. Public hearing to consider the wastewater treatment and pollution prevention projects proposed for 2024 Community Preservation Fund 20% Water Quality Improvement Plan Grant Funding. Maria Z. Moore, Supervisor, dated August 22nd, 2024.
Thank you, Sunday. Would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Moore,
Present.
Councilwoman McNamara,
Present.
Councilman Iacilli,
Present.
Councilman Pell,
Here.
Councilman Scavone.
Present.
Right, so, please, and the last is, Madam Clerk, please read the notice of the public hearing. Sunday. Oh, would you
sorry.
please
Yes,
read the notice of
absolutely.
the public hearing?
Public hearing to consider the wastewater treatment and pollution prevention projects proposed for 2024 Community Preservation Fund 20% Water Quality Improvement Plan Grant Funding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Supervisor, Town Council members. Jacqueline Fenlon here, Director of Community Preservation. We are here today for a special meeting, and I really do appreciate you guys being able to schedule this and all the work that went into doing this special meeting today so that we can have these public hearings on a separate day and be able to focus on the water quality grant applications we received this year. This is the 2024 grant round, so we opened this round in February. All application submissions were due by March 15th, and then were reviewed by the Water Quality Advisory Board during the time with recommendations that you should have received the recommendation memo, as well as the bound packet in front of you is actually the summary sheets of each of these projects, which are posted on the wall here. We did have a total of 15 projects this year. With various categories. Today we have grouped the wastewater treatment and pollution prevention projects together. So we will be looking at, in your packet of the summary sheets, that will be the first 7. So we'll be going in order. I will just articulate the ones that we'll be hearing from today, just very briefly based upon the resolution that scheduled this public hearing. The first item is nitrogen reducing biofilter for the John Steinbeck House. So that is a reduction project to reduce nitrogen. It affects the Morris Cove and Sag Harbor Cove watershed, and it was submitted by the applicant of the Sag Harbor Partnership. So this requested funding is for $60,000. Okay. The next public hearing you will be hearing from is Harbor House Sewer System Installation. That is a supplemental funding request. They did receive funding already from the grant program, and they did have additional costs that were incurred. So that project is also a reduction project. It impacts the watersheds of Stevens Canal and Moneybog Bay. And the project applicant is Library Avenue Owners Corporation, and they are just doing business as Harbor House. So you'll see that it's also referred to as Harbor House as well. Watermill Museum is the third item on the agenda, which is for a sanitary system upgrade. If anyone's familiar with Watermill, they have a very constrained site, and obviously it's right on Mill Pond. So that is also a reduction project, which impacts the watershed of Mill Pond. And the project sponsor is Watermill Museum, and they are requesting funding in the amount of $83,250. Next, we are going to the Hampton Yacht Squadron, which is also a sanitary system replacement. And that is a reduction category and impacts the watershed of Moriches Bay. The project sponsor for that is Hampton Yacht Squadron Ltd., and they are requesting funding in the amount of $581,070. Number 5 on the agenda today is development and implementation of a sustainable and comprehensive watershed management and remediation plan for Mecox Bay. This is a reduction and a remediation plan, hoping to have a plan that results in a project. So this impacts the watershed of Mecox Bay, and this is submitted by the New York Center for Clean Water Technology of Stony Brook University. They are requesting $284,000 and $405. The next one is Sewer System Phase 1, which has been requested by the the village of Southampton, and this is a reduction project that impacts the watershed of Lake Agawam. Submitted by the village of Southampton as the applicant. They are requesting funding in the amount of $10,411,750. So that is number 6. And then lastly, the automated decentralized wastewater infrastructure management. This is a reduction as well category. This will impact various watersheds because this will be a pilot program that is going to impact different septic systems throughout the town, and those project locations will be identified later on. This has been submitted by Verified Water Incorporated, and they have requested $86,780,000. So this is the first half of the round for water quality. Through this year, the budgetary allowance for water quality is $19 million. Sorry, it's at the end here. $19,123,829. So this is the first essentially round. This is here, so the applicants today, if the applicants can please make a brief presentation to the town board explaining the particular specifics of your project, and that way the town board, if you have any questions, but today is really for public input and for the applicants to present their grant request to the board. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
All right, so let's get started with the first one.
So if I could have the representatives for the first one, we'll just go in the order of the resolution, which is for the John Steinbeck House nitrogen reducing biofilter.
Hi, Chris Gobler, Stony Brook University, also the director of the New York State Center for Clean Water Technology. Neither I nor the Center for Clean Water Technology is the applicant for this project, but I'm here just to say a few quick words about it because it's to use a technology that was developed by the New York State Center for Clean Water Technology. It's specifically called the nitrogen reducing biofilter. So to speak to the technology first, this technology has received, we've developed it in the year 2016. It's gone through both the experimental and what's known as piloting phase through Suffolk County's Article 19 program, which is the program that takes innovative alternative septic systems and tests them in Suffolk County. Through that process, this system has been the best performing innovative and alternative technology for septic in all of Suffolk County. It receives and produces the lowest nitrogen effluent of any system ever tested in Suffolk County. It's also been published to remove more than 24 personal care products, drugs, pharmaceuticals, solvents, and other household contaminants we don't want getting into our drinking water. This installation is specifically at the Steinbeck House. So the Center for Clean Water Technology has, over the years, worked with different nonprofits to help install IA systems. This particular location, Sag Harbor Cove, has been the site of some extreme, what we call eutrophication over the years. It experiences almost every year intense rust tides that are driven by intensive nitrogen loading, and also experiences low oxygen conditions. Several years ago, I did perform a study of Sag Harbor Cove and demonstrated through that study that 80% of the nitrogen entering Sag Harbor Cove is coming from on-site septic systems. And importantly, Sag Harbor Cove in this particular location is located far away enough from the sewage treatment plant that it's not really an option to hook up this home to a sewage treatment plant based on its location. So this technology will reduce nitrogen loading by as much as 90%, and thereby contributing towards improving conditions within the Sag Harbor Cove and Morris Cove region.
Professor Gobler, this wood chip box, this is an additional feature that's being added on to the IA systems that were already approved?
So this particular system is at what we would call a nitrogen reducing biofilter, the wood chip box version. So there's actually two different versions we have. The commonality in both is that it starts with a sand layer, and then after the sand layer, and that's where something called nitrification happens, and then it goes into a wood chip either layer or box, and then that's where the nitrogen is removed. So in this particular system, it's a sand layer that's 18 inches deep, and as it goes through there, after it goes through there, that water then goes to a wood chip box, and that's where the denitrification happens. And the advantage there is if anybody along the way, if it looks at the wood chip box, might be clogged, or there might be some other issue, you can actually access the wood chip box and change out the wood chips. Although that being said, we've had systems that have been operating for over 7 years now, and they continue to denitrify, and we think that's going to go on for decades because the wood chip box stays what's called anoxic. There's no oxygen, and the degradation of wood under anoxic conditions is very slow. And
so
then
it's not enhancing an IA system, it's instead of the IA system?
This is replacing the existing IA system. We have installed in other places wood chip boxes that enhance existing IA systems. But that's a different, that's taking the technology and the discoveries you made from this system and then coupling it with existing IA systems. And we do have a project actually with the town of Southampton to do that, and we're in the process of doing that as well. But this is site specific just for this particular location.
Dr. Gobler, good afternoon. Good to see you. Is this the same system that this board funded and that you all had installed at the Mashashamene Park?
Basically, yes. It's a slightly modified variation, but yes, essentially the same. It's also a nitrogen-reducing biofilter, and just to speak to that system, it was installed, I believe, in 2021. Actually, two systems there, and they've been performing very well with effluent, I think, in the vicinity of 10 milligrams per liter.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
When was this finally approved, the technology?
The provisional approval was received in the spring of 2023. And I just took one other thing I guess I'll just mention also is that we're going, the final step in approval is what's called general approval. And so if this system is supported and installed, we need to get to have 20 of each type of technology. So this will contribute towards getting this technology that is the best performing technology in Suffolk County for general approval for all of Suffolk County. So it would have that greater good benefit as well.
Question, what happens to the solids?
So this system works with a septic tank. Okay. So it solids are collected in a septic tank, and then it's just the effluent that goes into the system. Yeah. And I think in this particular system, I'm not sure actually. In some systems, the existing septic tank can still be used. So it's sort of like installing it with. In a perfect world, you can have both the existing septic tank and leaching rings and just place this technology between those two.
Dr. Gobler, nice to see you. So you've been actually doing a lot of research in Sag Harbor Cove and Upper Sag Harbor Cove. You actually presented, I think, last year at the Village Hall on some of your findings. Are you able to just provide us with a little bit of a timeline on what you're noticing happening in the water, just progressively?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I basically,
In summary.
yeah, what I would basically just say is that there haven't been market improvements, right? And that's not surprising based on what we've done there already. And that is to say, we've identified the problem, it's nitrogen overloading. We've identified where it's coming from, the on-site septic systems, but the upgrades there have been slow.
Yep.
And so, there's no, there is the potential threat of things getting worse with climate change and water warming. The bloom seasons extend, the oxygen levels decrease as a consequence of that. So absent action with continued warming, some of these conditions will certainly get worse. But I wouldn't want to say that's been the trend in the last 8 years yet, because it's there are other things that create interannual variability.
That effort was spearheaded by the Harbor Committee of the Village of Sag Harbor and Marianne Eddy, and this board has also contributed to those studies for the past 6 years. She does a great job of cobbling together monies from various areas, trustees, East Hampton Town trustees, the village, private initiatives as well. And also the town of Southampton is supporting the Village of Sag Harbor in their expansion of the sewer district there.
Yeah. But I think, like I said, unfortunately, this location is too far away to
Right.
link into that.
And
But
it
that's
takes
very
time
important.
and it takes money.
Yeah.
Right.
So you'll be monitoring for 3 years?
Correct. That's right. And that'll be, I should just say, the Center for Clean Water Technology is doing that as an in-kind contribution. So there's no funds are coming to the Center for Clean Water Technology, but we will be monitoring the performance of this system over time. All the funds for this go just actually to the John Steinbeck House themselves. They will hire the engineer and the construction company to install the system.
And the committee requested that we be provided with a report annually so that the board's aware of how efficiently it's working.
Yes.
All right, does anybody have any questions?
No, just to say that the Steinbeck House that was established a year ago, they have a board and there's a representative from Southampton, and I've been acting in that capacity, so I'm aware of this and will not be voting on this particular. I'm going to abstain.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, are we taking public comments? It's a public hearing, so, I don't have any cards.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who has any comments or would like to address the board on this application? Kevin, is anyone on Zoom who would like to speak? No one on Zoom. Okay, thank you. All right, so the next application is for the Harbor House on Stevens Canal in Moneybog Bay. Is there someone here to speak to that?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Harold LaVine. I'm the president of Library Avenue Owners Corporation, also known as Harbor House. And we're located in the Phase 1 sewer system plan of the village of West Hampton Beach. I'm here first to thank the Southampton Town Board for the original grant funding that we received. And second, because we're requesting supplemental grant funding in the amount of $66,000. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that in reviewing the application for today's meeting, I noticed that there were some errors in the documentation, but those errors do not alter the amount of funding that we are requesting. The numbers are accurate. When I appeared before this board, I guess over a year ago, requesting the original funding, which we received of $394,000, I had indicated that my estimate was that the costs were going to be greater by the time we did the project than when we created the proposal, which was in 2022. And unfortunately, I was correct. And what we found is that the plumbing contractor to install the septic system, the sewer system, We had originally put in at $319,000. That was what the engineers estimated. It turned out to be $385,000, and a copy of that contract was submitted with our payment request for the first cycle of payments. Therefore, that was the difference of $66,000. Additionally, at the time, we had committed to doing in-kind contributions to have the existing cesspools repurposed for rainwater downspout runoff, and that was estimated at $44,000 cost to our community. The reality is that ended up costing $54,000, an additional $10,000 cost to the community, which is not part of the grant request. In addition,
That's separately taken.
that was part of our matching funds. The 44,000 now became 54.
Not connected to the sewer. That's not,
Well, it was our contribution as part of what they do with the septic system. It was to repurpose the septic system for rainwater runoff. The second thing is we chose not to include in our original grant request any funds for parking lot restoration, and we were going to fund that ourselves, and that was not in the grant request. The cost for that project was originally programmed out at $165,000, and it ended up costing us $228,000, another $63,000. So in all, the total project went up by $66,000 for the sewers and $73,000 for the matching fund portion of the program. So we're requesting approval for the remaining $66,000, which we desperately need for our small community, which would be very, very helpful. And again, thank you for the original grant request. Our sewer system went live in the middle end of May, and I doubt that there's been a reduction in the nitrogen levels yet, but everything is working well and we don't see any problems. The system is working as designed, and it's the same system that's in the village because we had the same engineer. So it worked out well. Thank you.
I remember this application, and I really love the idea of repurposing the existing septic system to capture stormwater runoff. I thought it was clever and innovative. And I remember thinking at the time that 394 might, it sounded like you guys were sharpening the pencil on that, and we really appreciate it. So it's not surprising that you would need a little bit more to get this application completed.
Thank you. And I will tell you that the repurposing was not my idea. I had no idea what that was. It was the engineers. It was the engineer's idea.
it was recommended. I'm glad you took them up on it.
And I assume you're in communication with Gabreski, the Recklers, or whoever that you'd be dealing with for the STP there, or are you?
Well, it's
No.
through the
No, that's with
village.
the
yeah.
Oh, it's through the village.
Which
Okay.
is through the village.
Okay.
They're just connecting to our system.
Yeah, we connected right on Library
Oh,
Avenue.
it's going from there. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Very good. I'm happy for you.
Yeah,
Glad it-
we're
glad it
very
got
happy
done.
too. Thank you. Any other
Okay.
questions?
No.
Thank you.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions or comments? Kevin, is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak?
No,
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, the third application is for the Watermill Museum sanitary upgrade. Is anybody here to speak to that?
My name is Sandy Rayner, and I'm the president of the Watermill Museum. And I just want to say, to begin with, thank you for considering this project. The Watermill has been important to not only our hamlet, but to the whole town of Southampton from the time of 1644, when it first was created. I'd love to tell you the history and all, because I'm just so passionate about it, but that's not why we're here. I can remember when I was 5 years old, going down to the Watermill Museum, and it wasn't a museum at the time, but with my mother and grandmother with some baked goods for a bake sale. And this is the sort of community support that has gone on for years and years. You've probably seen our quilts that we've made by our own hands, and we really cherish this, and we thank you for helping us to be good stewards. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Rick Wisnowski from the Rayner Group, the engineers for the project. We're just proposing a sanitary system upgrade here. Currently, there's about 4 brick cesspools that are in extreme disarray and failure, and we're proposing to upgrade to an innovative alternative on-site wastewater treatment system from Hydroaction, and then just installing some leaching galleys to complete the system. No changes are proposed to the building, and due to our proximity to Mill Creek, Mill Ponds, we think this is very important to upgrade and reduce the nitrogen loading into Mill Creek.
Thank you for being proactive. Does anybody have any questions about this one?
We are building a
Really good
park out
idea.
right across the way from the museum. So thank you.
It's a good project.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the audience? Or Kevin, is there anyone online on Zoom? No one on Zoom. All right, well, thank you very much for coming
thank you.
today, both of you. All right, the next application is the West Hampton Yacht Squadron for sanitary replacement.
Maria, I'm just going to say something first for this application, just for disclosure. As the Commodore for the last 2 years of the West Hampton Yacht Squadron, I signed the application for the water quality grant application being heard today. A few years back, former Councilman John Bouvier, being familiar with our property, recommended we make an application for water quality grant funding to make it feasible financially for our not-for-profit organization to accomplish this installation. I have been working as a team with 2 past Commodores that have donated their time and expertise to making this application, and we're all very glad to be part of this process to work towards the future and to be good stewards in helping improve the health of our bays with the installation of an IA system. Our property is surrounded on 3 sides by Moriches Bay and is also next to a Southampton town marina. I will turn this over now to Aaron Turkanian, Jim Hume, and our engineer, Paul DeLandro, to make the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good to see you all. And thank you for this opportunity to present what we think is quite an interesting and important application. As Ms. Schirmeyer indicated, this is an application on behalf of the West Hampton Yacht Squadron, which is directly adjacent to Moriches Bay, to upgrade our existing septic system, which was last approved in 1974. So it has a few whiskers on it and needs a lot of help so that we can continue to provide the services that the club has provided in part since 1890 was when the club was first founded. It moved to its current location in the late 20s, early 30s, and in the late 60s, the final building took place so that it pretty much resembles what it does now. Subsequently, there was an addition of a swimming pool and a tennis court. We provide sailing for youth as well as adults. We have tennis, we have swimming, obviously, for youth and adults. We have a dining facility, we have a dining room, a kitchen. We provide dinners on a regular basis as well as other social activities. The club has approximately 300 families that are members, so that's almost 1,000 people that probably use our facility on an annual basis. Many of the members are residents, and a large percentage of our members are also year-round residents. So if this grant is approved, it will allow us to build this system, which will not only support our activities, but enhance and improve the nitrogen being the big buzzword, not buzzword, the big important thing that this will have a substantial impact on. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Paul Delandro, our engineer, to describe the specific system that's being put in place.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Paul Delandro. I'm the principal at Delandro Andrews Engineering. We were hired by the Yacht Squadron to design the innovative or alternative wastewater treatment system that's going to be hopefully installed to reduce the nitrogen, BOD, and TSS at the site. As mentioned, currently the system is approximately 50 years old. Although at the time it was installed, it exceeded all the requirements. It currently is not meeting the potential for the nitrogen treatment on the site, given the introduction of newer technologies and the approval of the county. Additionally, the leaching galleys are in very close proximity to groundwater. So although it has a traditional septic tank, which isn't denitrifying to the levels that the proposed technology would, the leachate is also entering directly into the groundwater and subsequently the surrounding water bodies, making this a critical location due to its geography, but also due to the nature of the current system and its age. We are currently proposing to install FujiClean treatment systems, which should result in roughly an 83% reduction in nitrogen and utilizing a low-profile leaching structure. The benefit of that low-profile leaching structure is we're going to have to raise the grade a little bit, but we'll be able to get the code required and proper separation of groundwater in addition to that treatment, overall creating a much better situation for the current site. And that's the gist of it. If you have any technical questions or anything else after, please.
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Supervisor, members of the board. My pleasure to be here. Aram Turchunian, the 54th Commodore of the West Hampton Yacht Squadron. So we're really excited about this project. It's got tremendous benefits, and as Paul said, it's an 83% reduction, but in real world terms, it's 323 pounds less nitrogen annually that are going into what is in essence a peninsula surrounded on three sides. So we're really thrilled with the work that Delandro Andrews has done on the project. We went through an extensive review of various designs before we came upon the one that we're looking at, which Paul has described. And thank you very much for considering it, and encourage you to support and approve this. Thank you.
What's the gallons per day?
It's 2,000 gallons per day.
Because I wanted to have you explain the Watermill Museum. They need $83,000 to replace to install their IA system, and this is $580,000 to install two of the systems. But is that because of the gallons per day that's being treated?
That's correct. So the both the digester is larger, and the leaching field is substantially larger. Will end up being approximately 2.5 times the size, horizontally as it is now.
The Watermill one is only 300 gallons per day.
Yeah, I see that. What was that? Something about the leaching field that's distinguished.
So in this case, right now the system is the traditional leaching pools, basically round concrete rings that sit at or near groundwater. What we have proposed in the engineering here is what's called an infiltrator system, and this is a plastic half dome system. So the relief on it, as opposed to being either 4 or 6 feet high, as a leaching ring would be, is only about 1.5 feet to 2 feet high. And what that allows us to do is to minimize the amount of fill necessary to achieve the 2-foot separation between groundwater and the bottom of the infiltrators.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. So in the summary sheet here, it does mention the installation of a grease trap. Is that still part of the proposal?
Yes, yeah, that's required for the food services operation.
Because the comments from the committee was that they didn't want it necessarily tied to just the funding tied to the commercial kitchen. They wanted to see it mostly aimed toward, the infrastructure to help with, the nitrogen reduction.
We just did a system on a town facility, and we excluded the grease trap from funding in our own system. So that's why. Is that the $7,000 difference?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what the difference
Okay, well, that seems reasonable.
Perfect.
We did it to ourselves, so.
Very reasonable.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
Nope.
Very good, thanks. Does anybody in the audience have any questions or concerns? And Kevin, is anybody on Zoom? All right, let's move forward with the next application, which is the development and implementation of a sustainable and comprehensive watershed management and remediation plan for Mecox Bay. Who's here for this application?
Hi, Chris Gobler again. So this is through the New York State Center for Clean Water Technology, and this proposal specifically to address Mecox Bay. As you're probably aware, Mecox Bay is one of 2 estuaries in the town of Southampton that's temporarily open to the ocean, but is closed for much of the year and has historically been prone to a lot of the symptoms of eutrophication. For example, harmful algal blooms, but in a way that other systems aren't, in that it actually can experience both marine harmful algal blooms and freshwater harmful algal blooms. So we've seen both marine, for example, Alexandrian blooms in there that make saxitoxin, but we've also seen, in fact, even this summer, cyanobacterial blooms, blue-green algae blooms that reside in freshwater, and that's because the salinity of the system can fluctuate from as low as 2 to as high as over 30 parts per trillion, per thousand, as a function of it being open or closed to the ocean. You may or may not have seen an article in the New York Post this summer that declared that Mecox Bay ranks in the bottom 10 of all water bodies in the country for pollution. That was based on data from Surfrider and measuring specifically levels of pathogenic bacteria. But it's true, the levels of bacteria in the system are very, very high, as well as the levels of nitrogen. Of course, the high levels of nitrogen promote those harmful algal blooms and the low oxygen conditions. As you're probably aware, the Southampton Town Trustees developed a management plan for Mecox Bay not too long ago that was specifically to address the opening and closing of the cut, and specifically the fact that the DEC and actually federal regulators put there's a lot of regulations on when the cut can be open, when it can't be open, and DEC put a lot of restrictions on, a lot of requirements on the trustees getting their most recent permit to open that cut. But in that report, if you read that management plan, specifically it made reference to the fact that the trustees, while they can manage the cut, they can manage the shell fisheries, within Mecox Bay, they unfortunately have no control over the watershed. And the watershed for Mecox Bay is enormous. It travels as far north as North Sea, and it encompasses, I think, more than a half dozen ponds and tributaries and such. So it's a lot more than just the homes on the water body there. And it's a very complex watershed. Beyond the fact of having these ponds and tributaries, if you look in that watershed, it's arguably the most agricultural watershed within the town of Southampton, if you break up the different water bodies. But it also has some really intense areas of septic as well. And, to date, it's been in many ways a somewhat neglected estuary. There hasn't been a comprehensive effort to remediate that water body. And that would contrast with places like Sagaponack Pond, in East Hampton, places like Georgia Pond, Lake Agawam, Shinnecock Bay. So this project is to specifically address Mecox Bay, and the timing of this was fortuitous in that just before this proposal was written, a nonprofit group was formed called the Mecox Bay Conservancy, and they actually are contributing $50,000 to this project as match. And they're very interested in addressing water quality issues for Mecox Bay. So the crux of this project is to firstly identify what are the precise sources of pollution to Mecox Bay, with an initial focus on nitrogen, but also looking at other things like pathogens as well, because pathogens are definitely an issue as I already stated, for Mecox Bay. And to come up with when I say sources, it's both on the nitrogen front, it's both, where is it coming from physically, but how much is from septics, from agriculture, from residential lawns, from the atmosphere, from sediments, which aren't always considered but can be a strong source, from pets, from birds, from all sources. Similar to what's been done, for example, for Quantuck Bay in West Hampton and Moriches Bay, Moneybug Bay. Another big crux of this study is to have an eye towards remediation. It's a very, as I'm sure you're aware, Mecox Bay, the shoreline there is, it's complex, and it has a lot of potential opportunities for creating mitigation, and as it currently exists, has a lot of problems when it comes to runoff. The bacteria, we don't know where it comes from. We're going to know from the study, but historically, surface runoff is a very strong source of bacteria, and there are a lot of locations where the road in Mecox Bay ends literally at the bay. And when you have an event like we had on August 19th, which people call the 1 in 1,000-year storm, parenthetically, that's the third time we've had 10 inches of rain on Long Island in the last decade, so it wasn't the 1 in 1,000-year storm. But this is happening more and more frequently. When that happens, that water is just shooting directly into Mecox Bay. So another part of this project is to really look at the entire shoreline and look for opportunities where things like that can be mitigated. A collaborator and co-investigating group for this project is Cornell Cooperative Extension. So Molly Graffam, Dr. Molly Graffam is here, and I'm going to have her talk to what they're going to do with regards to also looking at the shoreline and looking at opportunities for looking at groundwater and opportunities for mitigating that groundwater. Another big part of this project is going to be having a watershed manager for the Mecox Bay watershed. And so specifically within the Center for Clean Water Technology, there's a gentleman whose name is Tom Varley, who has done this work in other water bodies, specifically Sagaponack Pond and Georgica Pond. Tom Varley was specifically hired to work with people to bring them to the very circuitous process of upgrading septic systems. As I'm sure you're aware, it's an intimidating process. It's not easy. It takes a long time. And having worked with individuals before, it doesn't. People may be enthusiastic in the beginning, but can be dissuaded because the process is so complex, right? And so what Tom has done in other watersheds and would do here would be to gauge interest of homeowners, find out who wants to get their system upgraded, work with them to identify engineers who can design the system, look at the system, and sort of interface with the engineer to make sure the system is as efficacious as possible, reducing as much nitrogen as possible, and then help them get with the designs done, so they get submitted to Suffolk County, and concurrently work with the homeowner to apply for grants. And as you know, that's also a complex process because there's the town grants, there's county grants, there's state grants. But he's got that streamlined. He can help people apply for all of those, and can even help them make judgment calls, which he's done before. Like, you know what, you can apply for all three of these, but for example, a current situation, that Suffolk County grant, you might be waiting a year, and you can probably get this funded without that. And so maybe you want to move forward. Just as an example of the level of detail. And he has contacts, with people here at the town and within Suffolk County, so he can make those phone calls as needed. And he can also, he's familiar with all the different installers out here for different IA systems, and then could help recommend, an installer, and even get quotes from installers and help them choose the one that's going to be the least expensive. And again, he's done this in Georgica Pond, and that's a system where there are more IA upgrades as a percentage of the homes within a 2-year watershed in Georgica Pond than any other water body across Suffolk County, with about 40 out of 160 homes already upgraded. And that's the sort of progress we're going to need on all of these systems. So that's also a part of this project.
Yeah, I think that's so important, the public outreach and education and the assistance is a big deal. And get people to engage.
And maybe you're aware there's going to be a referendum on the ballot this fall for Suffolk County. And so Suffolk County is positioning themselves to really accelerate the process of these upgrades. I mean, they've laid the groundwork very nicely through Article 19, but things have moved slowly. So this new referendum will open, I don't want to say the floodgates, but should accelerate the whole process. And so this would, and therefore, instead of just doing 40 homes in the watershed, maybe we can get to 400 homes. And then the final part of this project is to, going back to the studies that are going to be done by Cornell, looking at the entire shoreline, and then also looking at the sources of nitrogen and also pathogens to sort of lay out an entire management program for Mecox Bay, with the idea being that future decisions made for remediation, so potentially future proposals coming to this, to the CPM, to the board, will be made based on how effective a project would be. So that is to say, tied to this plan, you could say, this is an important project because this will address X% of the nitrogen load or the pathogen load. And sometimes, everybody is well-intentioned, of course, but sometimes projects are proposed that are, they're all good and well, but they may only be addressing, 0.25% of a problem in a given water body. And so this will help refine the approach going forward to make sure that the projects that are going to have the biggest impact are the ones that are moved forward. And in some cases, it may be this project could have a huge impact, but we need a little bit more information, right? That's also good to find out. So that's the final part, is coming up with a comprehensive management plan. So I think that's my summary, and if there are questions, if you have
Dr.
to talk
Douglas,
about it.
Chris?
Yeah.
What's the time frame on this?
2 years is the time frame, with the idea being that the first year is sort of data collection and investigation. All along, the septic upgrades are going to be made, but 1 year for full-on investigation, and then the second year more towards developing the management plan based on all the findings.
Then at the end of the 2 years, you'll report back to us?
Correct.
And what does the trustees have involved with this?
I should have mentioned that, and I meant to. The trustees have written a letter of support, so I went to the trustees. They're fully aware of this. That letter was submitted to the CPF committee. I could reproduce it if you don't have that already. They're fully supportive, and primarily because, like I said, I don't think the term "our hands are tied" made it into the report. I'm not sure, but something to that extent, where they feel like they wish they could do more, but their powers are limited to just the cut and what happens in the water. But when it comes to the watershed, their hands are tied. Maybe that was a quote like that in a newspaper. I'm not sure, but
I think I heard that quote a few times.
yeah, I think that was from Scott. Maybe that was in the New York Post article.
Yeah.
It's kind of embarrassing to have to be able to recall that. So, anyway.
To that point, though, the trustees have done carp removal, and they've done floating islands in Mill Pond, which is in the watershed, obviously, but will you be studying that shoreline and that water body
Yes.
as well, because it feeds directly in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's going to be very important. So both Mill Pond, Channel Pond, Kellis Pond, Burnett Creek, Swan Creek, Sam's Creek, all of them are within the watershed. They're all going to be under consideration.
Jules.
Say it again.
Jules.
Yep.
Long
Jules
Pond is as well, right?
Yes. Yep. There's a
And
lot.
that's had harmful algal blooms as well.
It has. So it's there's a lot, and like I said, it's a complex watershed, and in some septic is definitely part of the issue, but there's definitely it's agricultural intensive, so that probably is going to end up being part of the solution, or need to be part of the solution as well. And that I should say also, there's some farms that go right up to the water body itself, and
There are farms that are in the water when it.
Yes, yeah, and so the idea would be to look for those opportunities to connect with those farmers, and can there be mitigation made in those scenarios where that exact scenario, you get that 1,000-year storm that's not 1,000 years but every few years now. If it's the wrong time of year, not only is the farm in the water, but as the water recedes, it's pulling all the fertilizer and whatever else into the Mecox Bay. So there's a lot to be done. Even like along, I won't go and I just mentioned like Flying Point Road. If you've driven down Flying Point Road, it's almost 2,000 feet, and I always talk about water bodies. You always want to have a really good buffer between a road and the water. And, there, at least there's a bulkhead, but it's like a foot of sand. And so there's a lot to be done. That's just another example where they probably.
That could be your next project.
That's the idea, is to get a set, to prioritize things based on what the numbers show.
Really important. Thanks for taking it on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
And I'm
does
going to have
anybody
my
else have
colleague, Dr. Graffam, talk to the groundwater part of the study.
All right.
I just wanted to be here in support of the proposal and to give a few more details about how Cornell will be involved. My name is Dr. Molly Graffam. I've been leading the groundwater program area at Cornell Cooperative Extension, and we've been using what we've been calling our nitrogen remediation siting strategy, taking direct measurements in impaired water bodies in the groundwater discharge zone. And this is where those contaminants that are in the groundwater are seeping up into water bodies. So we're identifying the groundwater discharge zone area and identifying the sediment conditions, the shoreline features, taking direct measurements and learning about the types of nitrogen that are entering the water body through groundwater. The types of nitrogen that's entering can actually inform where that nitrogen is originating from, and we find where the groundwater seepage rates are highest, as well as the highest nitrogen concentrations. And those two factors, the rate of groundwater flow and the concentration of nitrogen, that's where the most nitrogen loading to the water body is happening. So part of the study will be taking those direct measurements and helping assist with the outreach and education and the management plan components. We've been successfully doing this in other water bodies in Southampton thanks to CPF-funded projects, specifically in Shinnecock Bay and more recently in the Sagaponic Pond watershed in association with the Peconic Land Trust. So looking forward to starting this in Mecox where it is greatly needed. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's very good to see Cornell and Stony Brook working together.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree. Chris.
It's good.
Thank
Glad
you.
to see that.
Thank you. All right, does anybody have any other questions or comments? Kevin, is anyone on Zoom? All right, okay then, thank you both. Let's move on to the sixth application, the sewer system phase 1 for the village of Southampton.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you? I am Jen Messiano Hyam. I'm a grants coordinator with the Village of Southampton, and joining me is Adriano Strepo with the D&B Engineers and Alex Wallach, the Planning Director for the Village. So in front of you, you have the application from the Village of Southampton requesting approximately $10 million towards the Phase 1 collection and conveyance system for the village's proposed sewer system. The sewer system is intended to address the water quality issues that are well documented in Agawam Lake. Dr. Gobler's work is all over many of the applications today, and his work in 2017 determined that approximately 69% of the nitrogen load in Agawam Lake is attributed to the on-site septic systems in the village. So this system would address nitrogen inputs from 254 parcels in the village. The treatment capacity would be 198,330 gallons per day. And once constructed, the system would address nitrogen reduction of 37,400 pounds of nitrogen per year. So if you have any questions on the project, we're happy to do our best to answer them for you.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's impressive, 37,400 pounds a year.
Have you found a location for it yet?
This is for the collection and conveyance system. That's the content of this proposal here. The village is currently working through its options for the STP location. I don't know.
So the village is currently looking at 2 very promising sites. So it's in negotiation with private owners. So
Would it, as with the last application, the effort to get the property owners that are in proximity to the lake, or in that case the bay, to convert to the IA systems, wouldn't that have a big impact on the condition of the lake? Or is that not adequate to make a change? I mean, is the sewer system going to treat Lake Agawam, or is it just for the downtown? What's the area affected by it?
it's a downtown area, and it goes all the way to the lake, and it includes a large number of commercial parcels. So where IA systems will be more difficult to install.
And the village is very close to groundwater, correct?
Correct.
I mean, I know
Yes, this
some
area
of the
is-
businesses have water in the basements if they even have basements, and
Correct. So nitrogen is leaching into the groundwater faster than.
Did you want to provide us with any information in addition?
No, just speaking for support.
Okay.
Councilman McMahon noted many of the systems are sitting very close to groundwater, and we know from many of the business owners that they are failing. Some of them are being pumped multiple times during the week in the village's busiest season.
Mm. Yeah, well, there's certainly a need for it.
Yeah, it's well needed in the village.
I should add too that the village is working hard to apply for all available funding opportunities to offset the capital costs of this. It's right now expected that the collection and conveyance system plus the STP is going to be in the neighborhood of $55 million. We have applications out to New York State, various agencies under consideration. The village has received $1 million in an EPA award so far, and as time goes forward, every available opportunity to the village is going to be applying to offset its the capital fund needs for the project.
Mm.
So we thank you for your consideration.
Do you have a time frame where you hope to have it for your funded guaranteed?
Well, an optimal time frame would be this time next year to have all funding in place, but as we all know, there's an art and a science to capital fund development, so we will keep pushing for all funding availability until the project is ready to pull the trigger.
Well, if anyone can do it, you can.
Thank you. Much
Such a
appreciated.
great track record.
Thank you.
All right, does anybody have any other questions? How about Kevin on Zoom? Is there anyone?
I assume that EFC is one of the primary contacts up in the city.
Sure.
And the DEC?
Yes. Oh, yeah, the project is on the annual IUP list right now with EFC.
Okay.
So we've been giving them updated engineering information as it becomes available.
But they've been able to apply for the grants, even though there isn't a location for the treatment plant.
We've been putting in to stay on their radar. We're realistic that fund development will be on a faster track once the STP site is in place, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But the village wants to apply early and often to all available opportunities to maximize access to capital. I think others in the room have worked on with a similar strategy in other projects with good outcomes.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for presenting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and the last application we're going to hear today is the Automated Decentralized Wastewater Infrastructure Management Pollution Prevention Project.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm Bud Dunbar. I'm the president of Verified Water, and we commercialize technology that comes out of universities, including this nitrogen sensor, which was initially invented by Chris's group at Stony Brook. the sensor has been thoroughly tested by the US EPA. The US EPA ran a nitrogen sensor challenge because the need for this product was so glaring to them. We have 24% of US households are on septic systems, and that's 26 million households that are sending polluted water into the groundwater and into the surface water. And those houses are just, it's economically infeasible to run sewers and centralized treatment plants to them. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because Suffolk County has more septic systems than the entire state of New Jersey. And we have, we are the epicenter of this problem. So we're going to build thousands of these mini wastewater treatment plants. And if you've ever been to a municipal wastewater treatment plant, there are dozens of operations people running around fixing things and measuring things and adjusting. All of that stuff has to be done in each of these hundreds of thousands of installations. We're going to have a lot of people doing that. It's going to be more than we can manage. So this project was conceived by the EPA to come up with a way to monitor these systems and measure their performance and do some other things that otherwise we'd have to send a technician out to the site, take a sample, bring it back to a lab, have it analyzed, and maybe a week later we'd find out that the system wasn't operating right. Chances are we'd say, well, let's take another sample next month because this one might be wrong. And it might be 2 months before we ever get to the fact that the system's not working. And one of the systems that we put in at Kevin McDonald's house, he's a senior guy at the Nature Conservancy, and we put the thing in, and there was no nitrification happening, and it turned out that his system wasn't working when we installed it. That's just anecdotal, but if his system's not working, then a lot of these systems could also be not working. And so this project is aimed at getting a statistically significant sample set from which we can predict how many of these systems are working properly, how many are not working properly, and try to get our hands on the post-installation performance of these systems. The nitrogen sensor is also measuring multiple functions in the system, such as nitrification and denitrification. So we can tell whether an Orenco system is aerating the waste properly, is it denitrifying the waste properly, and we can start to differentiate how some of these different systems perform and could be improved. And I could go on, and I'm sorry, I'm passionate about the project, but if you guys have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, thank you for being here. This sounds really fascinating and I think very productive, especially as we seek to coordinate a lot of our resources. As Dr. Gobler mentioned, septic upgrades assistance that many residents need, especially if they're in vulnerable areas. The 8 sensors that you're seeking to put around, where are you looking to place them? Do you have any idea right now, or?
To be honest, I wanted to wait until the project was approved by the town before we started bothering people about it.
Okay.
There's one system already installed at one of the best engineers in the county, David Rhodes. We put a system at his house. Put 2 systems at his house because he put one of these denitrifying wood chip box polishing units in his system, and then we put a nitrogen sensor on either side of the polishing unit to see how well the Orenco system was working and how well the polishing unit was working. So it'll be interesting to get that data and compare the performance of those two subsystems. But so the answer is that's one. There are 3 other sites that we've identified that we haven't we haven't got formal approval from the owners yet, but we think they'll approve. And frankly, I was going to work with the CPF committee to find some systems that they were curious about, or if they had some things that they wanted to focus on early in the project. So for the first year, we'll just put it at 8 houses, and those will probably be in sites that are close to water bodies, because I think that's a requirement of the CPF process.
I have a question for you. So
Sure.
The Southampton town here, this building, we're putting a new system in.
I'm just gonna.
We're putting a new system in this fall.
Here at Town Hall.
A town hall.
Yeah.
I would be very interested to have one of those here to see if we spent all the money at this building, if it works.
Well, I'd certainly be happy to look into that. And no reason why we couldn't do it unless it's under the pavement or something.
These include commercial, or are you just looking at residential?
We can look at both.
Because it's going to be a big system, and it's right in the watershed of Lake Iowa.
Yeah.
So would be very important.
Happy to look at it.
And
Some of these systems, some sites aren't.
Only problem is it'll be
appropriate.
under our parking lot.
Yeah, because we'd have to dig up parking lots and things like that to install it.
It's going to be dug up to be put in there, so it's not even in there yet.
Okay.
So you could put it in when it's installed.
Yeah.
And then put a manhole cover.
Could you tell us what the installation requires?
Yeah.
You can sit here.
You can either sit here or go back.
Yeah, so the microphone fits here.
I'll speak into the mic so you can. Is this
It's a good question because we pay a pretty big price to install these. So they're underground and kind of out of harm's way, and they're measuring the samples. They take samples in situ. So we actually have a submersible pump that sits down in the basin, and it pumps the wastewater up into our sensor, which is buried under the ground, and then our sensor measures it, and then just flows that right back down into the basin.
So you're testing the wastewater in the
in
system
situ.
as it's being
That's right.
treated,
Yeah.
or the water effluent after it's been treated. Just to clarify.
After
it's been treated.
Yeah. So the
okay.
basin that we're drawing from is the basin that holds the effluent before it's released to the distribution system, the leaching system.
So it's in between the leaching system and the actual septic system.
Sorry, the septic tank is the first component, then the treatment system comes next, and then the leaching system. So we'll be measuring the effluent from the treatment system before it goes into the leaching system.
Okay.
It would be the third spot the water stops.
Say again?
It'd be the third spot the water stops.
Before it's released out into
the third spot.
Yeah. Sorry, my hearing's not.
So it's fully treated, theoretically, going into the leaching field. So that's what you're testing.
It's interesting because some treatment happens in the soil after the leaching system,
right.
And so this is not taking that into account, but we're looking for places to test that to see how we can capture some of that the wastewater that's been released into the groundwater after the leaching system.
Thank you.
So I had one more question.
Sure.
In the case of like Kevin's system, so all of these systems that are in place, they've all been tested. They've all obviously been 20 of them out in the field after they've been certified. So when you come back with numbers like Kevin's and you say it's not working, it's potentially not the technology or the unit itself, but maybe something mechanically wrong with the system?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not trying to say that this is not a good system because it's not working. You're then able to find a mechanical
in fact, the aeration system was not functioning.
Okay.
Yeah, subsystem. but Kevin's system only gets tested once every 6 months. So, this system can test the water daily, hourly,
So you'll catch a problem way before.
Yeah, we'll catch problems sooner. Yeah.
So is this something that you see?
And we'll have some diagnostic to what the problem is.
So is this something you see as potentially being an add-on to these systems?
I see it as a regulatory tool. I see it as a development tool for the vendors, because they'll look at these things and figure out how to make their systems more competitive. I see it as I can't see it going into all 300,000 units that we're going to put in the county. I don't think we need to do that to get a statistically significant sample size.
No, but do you think you could get this down to like an on-site monitoring unit that's maybe not this complex, that maybe takes samples more frequently than once every 6 months, that you don't have to send somebody out? Like, it's almost like your meter on your gas meter.
Oh, that's exactly what we're trying to develop.
Okay.
Yeah. And the system that we have now requires us to, do some pretty elaborate installation work. We've got to run a power cord to the house underground, and we've got to bury the thing in the ground, and it takes us about 2 man days to install.
So if it became part of the system on installation, would be the ideal.
Yeah, and we are working to. We've just hired 2 people to start the process of making the thing more manufacturable so that we can get the costs down. But the size too, and the installation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
Okay.
Kevin, is anyone on Zoom? Well, thank you. Very interesting. Appreciate it. All right. Well, if that's.
I just wanna-
actually, Stephanie, did you want to? I'm sorry, Cindy. Did you?
I just want to ask Stephanie. if
Yeah,
she
I
wanted to-
was going to say, did you want to say a few words on behalf of the advisory committee?
Yes, Stephanie Davis, chairperson of the advisory committee. It was very nice to get a wide range of applications this year, and we certainly appreciate the assistance of CPF in helping us to manage the review process and the assessment process, et cetera. You saw our recommendations for things here. I think the one thing I want to make sure we are clear about, Anthony and I are both members of the Yacht Squadron. We recused ourselves entirely from any consideration of that particular application or input into the recommendation. So,
Popular place.
Yes, it is a popular place, so we kept ourselves out of that. But I want to thank the town board for your consideration today of these applications, and in another 2 weeks when we view the last of them.
All right. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your
Thank
hard
you.
work
Thank you.
Thank you.
evaluating each project. Appreciate it. All right. Well, if there's no other questions or comments, then I move to close the public hearing. Not
Second.
close. Yeah. All right.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That brings us to our public portion. What?
I think there was one on the agenda.
It is.
It
Yeah,
is?
that's not on here.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Any takers
I have one thing.
for public
This is public
portion?
portion.
Well, I'm part of the public sometimes.
You gotta open it to public.
Thank you.
Okay, we're open.
All right, let me see. Any
A second.
Zoom? Is there anybody on Zoom, Kevin, for public portion? Okay. Councilman Pell has,
I just want to let the people
Comment.
know in Hampton Bays that it's very exciting that they finished the inside demolition of the Bel Air Motel, and they're going to start on the outside tomorrow or the next day, and they hope to have it completely tore down in the next 2, maybe 3 weeks. It includes the swimming pool and have it all level. I know it's been a long time for the people in Hampton Bays, 7 years, but it only took this board 9 months to do it, to get rid of it.
Mm.
So thank you for the Hampton Bays people for being patient with us.
very good.
And then it's in, just on
It,
that
it
bill.
should be noted, sorry, that 7 years ago, that was actually filled with about 50 people actively living there. So, you know, there was some steps, as someone who was on the previous board, and I know how that went. But, you know, I'm happy and support what we are doing, and with the last board taking Bel Air down as well. But when we came in, there were people living there, and that septic system was actually overflowing into the creek there.
Not a good situation.
It was a bad deal.
Excuse me, Councilman.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I wanted to applaud Bill for his work in trying to stay on top of this with the whole board and with the pertinent parties to make sure that it was sought through, and it's also an indication that we're listening to the people of Hampton Bays, and they should know that they have an ally on the a bunch of allies here on the town board. So thank you, Bill, for all your work.
Yeah, thank you. It shows that the whole board can work together to get something done.
Yep.
Yeah, we're a good team. All right, well then I move to close the public portion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I also move to close the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.